As usual, the news reporter has beaten the features person to it. Carol took first shot, and I come next. Well, features people get used to it. Ask Rajeev, right? We get used to this treatment. If you're, for example, if you're working in a newspaper, you're expected to do all your feature pages first and get out of the way before all the reporters come marching in very grandly with their breaking stories. If you're on TV, your feature will not get prime time. If you're lucky, you'll just get a peep in the news. But does that mean we are second-class citizens, features writers? Are we the second-class citizens of the media world? The answer is no. Because ultimately we are all in the news business. So news will always come first. That's something we all have to live with. And we will not come last or second, but we come along with them. For example, just think of the way you read or you watch TV. Let's say you haven't read the paper, you've been out, you come home. What do you do when you put on the TV? Okay, let me catch the headlines. Let's see what's happening. Maybe just 3 minutes. So you just listen to the headlines. Okay, nothing happening there. Let me go on to maybe you're watching 2.5 Men or The Big Bang Theory or the 10,000th rerun of Friends. But you will spend those 10 seconds or 10 minutes just catching the news. The same thing happens when you're reading a paper as well. Skim over the front page. Unless you're a sports fan, in which case you'll go first to the last page. But otherwise, most of us would just have a look and say, okay, again, all boring, let me go on, right? That's the nature of it. So features will always come on page 2. But as I said, we are not the second-class citizens of the media world. And why not? Because here's the crucial thing. News comes first, but people spend less time on news and more time on features. How much time are you spending listening to the headlines? How much time do you spend on the front page? How much time do you spend on a newspaper? And how much time do you spend on a magazine? Even if it's a news magazine, you spend more time on that magazine than on the paper. On TV, how long can you watch those TV debates? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? 15 if you're really strong, if you're a really strong person? After that, what? But if you were watching a documentary on a subject that you're interested in, you'll be there for half an hour. If you're interested in films, you're watching Rajeev's show, you'll watch till the very end. You would probably watch Coffee with Karan, you'd spend 1 hour. If you're a real film fan, you'd even spend 4 and 5 hours watching an award show. So news is important, it comes first, but we get the time. We get the attention. And that's the difference. And that's what we need to do as features people. And not only do we spend more time on features, I think it's also the kind of stories that we tend to remember. I don't know how many of you young ones remember when the Babri Masjid dome came down. The slightly older ones. We all remember that, yes. But what are probably the shows or the scenes from TV that you actually remember? Which are the memorable scenes that you remember? Depending on what your interest is, it could be something from NDTV's We the People. It could be even their much older show, which was Jai Jawan. I thought it was a wonderful show. It could be CNN, IBN's citizen journalist show. Some really fantastic stories going in there. I'm afraid I can't think of any good show from Times Now. Somebody help me? Any good feature show from Times Now? Anybody here? Well, I guess it's all about TV debates.
It's a food show.
The food show?
Yeah.
Yeah, the two guys.
Kunal Vijay.
Kunal Vijay, yeah. So these are the scenes that you tend to remember. And sometimes, when we really get it right, a feature story can even change someone's life. And don't think of it as in some dramatic fashion. You could just be writing a piece on, say, the really different kinds of careers that young people have the option of picking up these days. It doesn't mean you go dashing out and go and say, okay, I'm going to become a tea taster or a wine connoisseur, but something stays in your mind, you know? Or maybe you read a story about a mother who's just lost a son, but in the midst of her grief, she decides to donate his eyes and his kidneys. That's something that stays with you even when you don't realize it. It could be a small health story. It could be something about relationships. But these kind of stories stay with you far longer than the news does. And they have the capacity to change your life. So then that's the challenge. On election results day, you're not going to have much time. That's okay, but every day is not election results day. Not every day is it that a prime minister gets assassinated. And thank God for that. And most often there's very little real news happening, but the news people will pretend there's a lot of happening and they'll package it and they'll, bombard you with all kinds of reports. Those are the days that we have our chance. We always have our chances. And the challenge for features people then is to make what you write, give it the kind of depth, the relevance, and the perspective that a news report cannot have. Let me take what is this Preeti Zinta and Ness Wadia. That's what's occupying so much of newsprint and news time these days. What will the news reports tell you? That, well, they had a tiff and, well, maybe she threw some four-letter words around and he grabbed her hand a little roughly, all because his mother did not get a seat. Fair enough, he's the owner. That's what the news report will tell you. But if you were a features person, how would you look at that story? You would look at it, you've got to go beyond the news. You could view that whole story through so many different lenses. Would you look at it through the gender issue? For example, supposing it was a man that Ness Wadia got into a fight with. How would our coverage have been different? How does the fact that it is a woman who's being abused verbally, allegedly, by a man, how does that make a difference? Is it about the sense of entitlement that the rich and powerful have, that the rich and powerful can even shove aside just the plain rich, forget the rest of us? Is it about seating at events like this? Sounds very trivial, but happens all the time. The whole thing happened because Maureen Wadia did not get Ness Wadia's mother did not get a seat in the front row. I don't know how many of you remember, maybe some 5-10 years ago, Rajeev, that Subhash Chandra slapped Karim Morani. Amar Singh came in with Amitabh Bachchan and he was very upset because they did not get a front row seat. Mr. Bachchan was as proper as ever, but Amar Singh picked up a fight. He picked up a fight with Shah Rukh Khan, and it all ended up with the owner of Zee, that Subhash Chandra, slapping Karim Morani. Who is Karim Morani? He's Shah Rukh Khan's right-hand man. And he's the guy who was jailed in, if you remember, in the 2G Spectrum case. It all comes together, there's Bollywood, there's corruption, there's scams, there's politics. It's the intersection of so many different sections of, if you want, life or our world or the media. It's the same thing with the Preeti Zinta case. It's Bollywood, big business, and cricket. No wonder it exploded. But there's something in it for everyone, so it just shows we can all coexist happily. We can all do our stories. And if you're a features journalist, let me just say this. Maybe the news guys will get their report on the front page, but sorry, I got a bad throat. But you're going to have much more fun. You're going to meet many more interesting people, and you're going to go to many more interesting places. So the only challenge for you would be, while you're having fun, try and give it some depth and relevance. Enjoy the ride.